Good morning, everybody, and thank you for... Bear with me. Apologies. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Dorset Council's Licensing Subcommittee. My name is Councillor Emma Parker. My name is Councillor Emma Parker. I will now get my fellow councillors to introduce themselves.
Councillor Les Fry from Dorchester West.
Councillor John Andrews from Sherborne East.
Thank you, councillors. I've just got a few formalities to carry out before we go ahead with this review this morning. Can I have an election of chairman for this meeting this morning?
I'd like to nominate yourself, Councillor Parker.
And I'll second that nomination.
Thank you, councillors. Do we have any apologies?
Apologies for absence were received from Councillors Sarah Williams and Paul Harrison, substituted by Councillors Les Fry and John Andrews.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any declarations of interest for this review this morning?
None. No declaration for me.
No, nothing from me.
Thank you. Have we got any urgent items?
There are no urgent items.
Any exempt business?
No exempt business.
Thank you. What I'll do now is I will go around the room for everybody to introduce themselves so I can ensure that I have got everybody on my list who has given the right to speak this morning. So I will start with our Democratic Services officers.
John Miles, Democratic Services. I'll be taking the minutes for the meeting.
Hello, I'm Elaine Tibble from Democratic Services.
Our Licensing Officer.
Catherine Miller, Senior Licensing Officer.
Environmental Protection.
I'm Darren Narain, I'm the Environmental Health Officer from Dorset Council.
Our Legal Advisor.
Lara Autry from Legal Services.
Thank you. I will now come over to the applicant.
Okay, Belinda Rideout, applicant.
Thank you. And you have two witnesses with you. I've got a Gillian Collins.
Yes, I'm Gillian Collins.
And Richard Barrington. I will now move over to the licence holder and you own the business, don't you, of Rocky's? Yes, if you'd like to introduce yourself, thank you.
Yeah, Scott Rock, DPS at Rocky's Bar, and my company is the premises licence holder for Rocky's Bar, Queen Street.
I'm Evelyn Rock. I'm just here to support.
Thank you very much. That's everybody I have on my list. So I will now go over to Catherine. Catherine, can you outline the review for us? We're here this morning for a review on Rocky's Bar on Queen Street in Gillingham.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is a hearing to consider an application brought by the current ward member in Gillingham on behalf of the residents. Those residents have contributed to the review and some of them are here today. When the review was made, the licence was held by the Carter Group, but during the course of the review, the licence was transferred to Scott Rock. Mr. Rock has been running his premises for a number of years. You have had copies of the representations that were received during the consultation phase of this application, and I would draw your attention to the current content from Environmental Protection. This is not a representation, it is a statement from Environmental Protection in response to matters raised by residents, so it is there for yours and everyone else's information. Thank you.
Councillors, do you have any questions for Catherine with regards to the report?
Not at this time, thank you.
Just one question, Catherine. Have any concerns come into licensing with regards to this premises?
We've had complaints from residents on and off for a number of years. Some of them are noise related, so we've always pointed in the direction of either Environmental Protection or we've offered them the review paperwork, but nothing has ever come in until now.
And just for clarification, it's been a 24-hour licence since 2006.
Yes, I can confirm it's been 24 hours since then, yep.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rideout, do you have any questions for Catherine with regards to the report?
No, I don't have any questions, Chairman.
Witnesses, do you have any questions with regards to Catherine for the report? No? Mr. Rock, do you have any questions for Catherine with regards to the report? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, I will now move over to Councillor Rideout. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Chairman, I have prepared a statement to read out, if I may, please. Thank you. So, good morning, Chairman and members of the licensing panel. I am Belinda Rideout, Dorset Councillor for the Gillingham area. As stated in the review application, as local ward councillor, I've been contacted by residents of Queen Street and Bay Road because their health and well-being is being negatively impacted by antisocial incidents and issues associated with Rocky's Bar, Queen Street, Gillingham. I'd like to make it clear that residents are not looking to have anything so drastic as having Rocky's Bar closed down. They recognise it's a popular venue, particularly with the Legends nightclub closing a few years ago, and gives young people in particular a place to socialise. And they recognise all the fundraising and support the bar gives the local community, and certainly not disputing those facts. However, since Rocky's Bar opened with nightclub hours in August 2021, things have taken a very different path, and although in the early days of operation, meetings were held between management, Mr. Rock, and business partner Charlotte, and residents, in August and September 2022, these had limited outcomes. And this communication has since broken down with the unfortunate scenario with Rocky's Bar now being subject to a review. There's always been a bar and a restaurant at this location on this mostly residential street for as long as back as I can remember, and residents lived, on the whole, in harmony with whatever establishment was operating at the time. However, since 2021, there's been an escalation of ASB incidents linked with the operation of Rocky's Bar, with CCTV installed by the ASB team in August 23. And over the years, residents have logged numerous incidents with the police, ASB team, Dorset Council Licensing and Environmental Health, and have kept and submitted diaries, records of all such incidents, along with the door cam photos and footage. With regard to prevention of crime and disorder, security is one of the main concerns, and residents have provided examples of door cam footage, photos and footage of incidents happening in Queen Street. For example, on the 2nd of September 23, an incident in the street involving band members protecting their mother, who had been assaulted by a very drunk passerby outside. Mr. Rock himself, holding a valid SIA licence at the time at approximately 11:30, was photographed, videoed, leaving the front door of the bar unattended for a length of time. And quoting from Rocky Bar's statement, "Yes, it did take longer than I would have liked it to, but as mentioned by one statement, we," that's himself and door staff, "were outnumbered 6-2. This was an incident that we did not feel required police assistance." An anonymous resident called this incident one of the worst nights experienced so far. 30th of September 23, a fight outside the bar on Queen Street that continued along the street towards the High Street. Mr. Rock and security attended the incident. A resident's car was damaged and another resident awoke to find their front door covered in blood. Apparently reported to police after the event, as per Gillian Collins' statement. Other serious incidents, a fight outside the front of the bar involving a nun patron with a weapon, on this occasion a hammer, on New Year's Eve, Day, 23-24, just past midnight when police were called and arrests made. And according to Rocky's Bar's statement, Mr. Rock and his door security were assisting the police by keeping the offenders' friends away from the arresting officers and keeping the vast majority of patrons inside the bar to stop more bystanders getting involved. Richard Barrington, immediate neighbour, hearing the very loud commotion, felt he should support the two attending officers as there were around 15 people involved and officers were struggling to deal with the incident. The bar had to be closed early that night to prevent further public nuisance and crime and disorder, as per Rocky's Bar's statement. Why were there bystanders and bar patrons outside the bar at that time, other than the 5 smokers allowed? 11th of February 24, between 11:30 and 2:30, when there was a series of drunken arguments with people standing outside the front of the bar to smoke. Mr. and Mrs. Barrington's statement. Then between 1 and 1:30, police were called to arrest an aggressive male customer who had been earlier evicted from the bar by 3 of the bar's customers, following an incident with a lady. Resident statements in the review application detail many incidents of disturbance during 23-24, but more recent 101 reports on the 23rd of March 24, disturbance due to a stream of drunken customers leaving Rocky's Bar, screaming, shouting loudly as they were walking towards the Co-op at Bay, and associated dangerous driving on Queen Street. 29th of March, Rocky's Drum and Bass Night, 7 to 3 a.m., with residents being disturbed from 1:30 to 4:30, with groups loitering after the event, girls screaming, sitting on the walls along Queen Street, Bay Road, very drunk and disorderly, and chatting with people in cars. An event called Drink the Bar Dry, scheduled for November 23, was cancelled after issues were raised to the licensing department by local town councillor Mark Warden, who lives with his young family on Queen Street. Rocky's Bar attracts the late-night, early-hour patrons and is the only venue in town open into the early hours. I agree this reduces the risk of drink driving. However, the difference between the now-closed Legends nightclub on Brickfields Industrial Estate is that it was located on this business park, where customers and any incidents didn't disturb residents in their homes. Rocky's Bar is on a quiet residential street, very visible, audible, and potentially very disturbing to residents. There is one incident after another, often violent, coupled with the regular ASB of bar patrons in the street and those attracted to the venue from other drinking establishments. Screaming and shouting, vomiting and urinating on a regular basis really is unacceptable. Residents have installed doorbell cams as a means to feel safer. So on behalf of the residents, I ask the licensing panel to reconsider Rocky's Bar current licensable activities and door security. In regards to public nuisance, noise, smoking, littering, vomiting and urinating, noise from amplified music, of course the bar needs music, and I note the louder speakers are all based in the back room, and as Mr. Rock states, locking the back door at 11 p.m. is a consequence of concerns raised of too much noise in the back garden. Customers are invited to smoke outside the front of the bar, limited to 5. This causes a problem in itself with passers-by stopping to chat and a greater chance of fights breaking out. Door supervision at all times should keep this orderly and friendly with a minimal impact on residents. Mr. Rock has indicated that a solution may be to allow smoking in the rear garden after 11 with a 5-person maximum, which would prevent passers-by or band patrons approaching customers. However, this would increase noise levels for neighbours. Mr. Barrington has audio files to demonstrate the loud burst of noise when the rear door is opened. But we understand there is an unused smokers area to the side, perhaps a trial. Or Mr. Rock's suggestion of rearranging the bar and move the DJ booth and bands to the front of the bar to minimise the opening of the front door. Worth considering, but of no good if there is inadequate door supervision and the decibel reader is not checked regularly. The Warden family of Trevelyan, Queen Street, states that during the summer months, the front door is frequently left open for a considerable amount of time, and at one point, over 20 people were witnessed in the street outside the bar between the hours of 10 and 2 a.m. on the evening of the 8th and 9th of September 23. Mr. and Mrs. Barrington's statement. And there were door staff present, but they failed to stop people from entering or leaving the premises and made no attempt to quieten the crowd. Mr. and Mrs. Barrington state that they have witnessed the patio doors leading from the bar onto the deck being wedged open during the summer months until 11 p.m. when the garden is closed. And the weekend of the 23rd, 24th of March 24, people were still in the rear garden till 11:45 and disturbances in Queen Street till 1:30 a.m. Mr. Barrington's update with audio files available. And at 11 p.m. on Good Friday, the 29th of March 24, the drum and bass night, a drunk young lady was observed staggering out of the bar and then proceeded to urinate against the Barrington's house. There was vomit on the pavement that night. That's Mr. Barrington's update, 30th of March 24. The bottom line is that adequate and qualified door supervision, both front and rear door, is vital in reducing the noise from inside the bar, ensuring smokers are mindful of residents and dispose of their butt ends appropriately, and ensuring people leave the premises and immediate area quietly and not allowed to loiter in the street and cause public nuisance. This should significantly reduce litter, the plastic cups, the broken glass, the butt ends, which residents have complained about, and overflowing waste bins, which attract more waste, as detailed in Mr. and Mrs. Walden's statement, and the urination and the vomiting along the street. Interestingly, Mr. Rock states that they stop pouring the glasses at 10:30 and have them all collected up by 11 p.m. We never knowingly let customers leave with glasses, and since the original complaints came in about plastic cups, we have stopped allowing customers out the front with these too. And something isn't adding up here. And on behalf of the residents, I ask the licensing panel to reconsider the current licensable activities and the door supervision of the establishment. Mr. Rock's comments to continue to ban patrons they catch urinating on the street is noted. It is also requested that further soundproofing of the bar be considered to reduce noise impact for the immediate neighbour, Rowton House, home of Mr. and Mrs. Barrington. Residents have raised other concerns for the panel's consideration, and this includes protection of children from harm, letting patrons bring dogs into the rear garden, along with Mr. Rock's dogs, where children are playing on equipment, and concerns re the safety of the play equipment and dogs barking in the beer garden at unsociable hours. Furthermore, children living along Queen Street should not have exposure to such antisocial behaviour, and Dorset Council Child Protection Services has endorsed the request that residents need the reassurance that stricter conditions and improved security is put in place immediately, and along with regular policing to ensure customers' behaviour is properly monitored and upheld. Car parking. There is a single yellow line along Queen Street, so on-street parking is only allowed after 6 p.m. However, inconsiderate, dangerous parking often blocks access from residents' drives in contravention of the Highway Code and therefore a criminal offence. This is a tricky one because it may not be customers of Rocky's, but with the management of Rocky's Bar showing good example and cooperation between the bar and the residents, this would help. Double yellow lines on Queen Street would not be an option and has already been looked into by the Town Council. As local ward member, I felt it was absolutely right to bring residents' concerns to the forefront, not just those who've submitted statements, but also, more importantly, those residents suffering in silence and too afraid to make any representation because of fear of intimidation and retribution. This may be unfounded, but living on your own with rowdy behaviour, fighting, shouting and screaming, cars revving, going on outside your front door at night and into the early hours is very intimidating for some. Other residents incredibly seem to put up with it, clearing up the mess and the litter, the urine, the vomit from their front gardens the following morning. Residents should not have to be subjected to or live their lives in this way. It is appreciated that some incidents are police matters, but the whole scenario needs a combined effort from the establishment, the police, Dorset Licensing and Environmental Health to find a way to reduce the impact of the current situation for residents. And from all the evidence I have seen, it is clear that there are significant failings with the security and door supervision arrangements at Rocky's Bar, which has led to the untenable situation residents are having to endure, leading to feelings of anxiousness, intimidation, general unhappiness in their own homes and gardens for a significant part of the year. We take heart from Mr Rock's final comments in his statement that they would welcome any guidance, alternative solutions from the police, neighbours, licensing and anyone else concerned or qualified to give advice. But residents need the reassurance that stricter conditions and improved security is put in place immediately, along with regular policing, to ensure customers' behaviour is properly monitored and upheld. So to summarise, to help make life easier for the residents, we would request the panel to consider increased door security, supervision, all times, review of opening hours, additional sound deadening to the premises, smoking arrangements, and conditioning regular meetings between the establishment and the residents. Thank you. That's the end of my statement.
Thank you, Councillor Rideout. Okay, we're going to come to you first, Councillor Rideout, to see if we have any questions for you before we move on to your witnesses, okay?
Councillor Rideout, thank you very much for your very extensive commentary and background to the situation. I'm looking at the reports here. Who's it from? Environmental protection comments and that. And I note that the number of complaints that have come in from various people on the dates relevant and on the times emails have been sent out with log sheets on, but they haven't been replied to. And I mean, I've got a number of cases here where calls have been made, environmental people have sent out and sent the log sheets out, but they've not been returned at all. Can you comment on that?
Sorry, Chairman. Could I ask Mr Barrington to answer that question? Thank you.
I'm afraid that's a slight misrepresentation of the facts, and I can prove quite clearly that I've sent back at least 3 months' worth of weekly reports. The problems have always been on a Friday and Saturday, and I'm not alone. Unfortunately, one resident died just recently of cancer, and she did the same thing, and I can get access to the files that she sent in. A large number, and this includes people in Barnaby Mead, which is actually on the other side of the Shreen River at the back of the property, have also done the same. So there have been a number of us, and I probably got it on my phone. If there's a pause, I could dig them up and prove that we did return them. And this was raised with Environmental Health a short period of time ago, and they confirmed that they had actually misplaced them and did have them on file.
That's all noted, but it looks like we've got 8 different complainants looking at the records here. You clearly are 1, possibly 2 of them, but there are 6 others that haven't been returning the forms. I know, and I appreciate you can't comment on that. All the complainants here are numbered A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H here, and there's clearly some apathy. People are initially are very passionate about making the complaints, but then don't follow them up, which is regrettable because it then leaves a lack of evidence all the way across. And I do raise that for other people who may be watching this here. If there are problems and you're sent review forms, please complete them and send them back in. So, Councillor Rideout, how do you feel that the door staff could act differently?
I think they have to be present all times during operation, opening hours, to make sure no one is loitering around at the front, to keep noise levels down, that everyone is moved on, there's no chance of any confrontation. They just need to be there and present and to do their job and to be stricter.
Thank you. I note that. Would you like to have 2, 4, 6, 10 there? I make that comment because I note the issue where the door was left unattended whilst they were dealing with an issue. Clearly, they can only be in one place at a time. They're either stood at the door like sentries, or they're dealing with an incident which might take them away from the door. How would you deal with a situation like that?
Therefore, I would say at least you would need 2 door staff on the front door that fronts Queen Street. most definitely, because if something kicks off, at least then the front door is secured.
How many there normally at the moment?
I believe there's not always door staff there, and as I said, Mr. Rock, he acted as door supervisor, door security on one occasion, and that's when the door was left unattended. But for future, yes, definitely need 2 on the front door.
Communication panel. Thank you. Apologies. The original licence application, which was 2006, imposed 2 conditions on the property. One of which was that after 11 o'clock, all doors and windows should be closed and sound should be inaudible. And the second gave the licensee the right to decide whether they needed door staff or not. Mr. Rock makes a value judgment on that basis, and there aren't always door staff present when the premises are open late at night.
Can I ask, is that done on a risk assessment?
It's done on a risk assessment basis, excuse me, and Mr. Rock does email us on a monthly basis as to what events he's got coming up, as to what store staff he'll have in place.
Yeah, so my question is the ASB team have been involved in Rockies. I'm surprised not to see the video evidence here today, and I don't think we've got it, have we?
No.
From the ASB team. I would have thought during the application somebody would have got hold of the ASB team and asked for that evidence, but we are where we are and we haven't got that evidence, so I'm just wondering where that evidence has gone to, or wasn't it requested to come to this hearing?
May I invite Gillian Collins to speak?
Thank you. Just a clarification regarding the monitoring forms from Environmental Health from Durham. That's how I started doing my monitoring, noise monitoring, and then I was advised to forward it on to Penny James at the ASB team, and ever since, I don't know, and I've had long conversations with Darren, who's been so helpful. I then started, I very rarely include you now, you go straight to Penny James, so probably for the last, I don't know, over a year or so. I only emailed Penny James yesterday because of a car left over my drive from Friday night. So all of my information, I don't include Darren's department or Louise. I send it directly to Penny James at ASB as well. Thank you.
With the information that the ASB team would have had, was there no thoughts to ask them to attend today for support?
Well, Chairman, that would have been my fault. Sorry, I apologise.
So they're not a statutory consultee to this. So, but no, okay, that's fine.
Mrs. Collins, thank you for the point you raised. I just want to pick up at what is there. If you've got cars blocking your drive, I would suggest you take a photograph of it or the registration number and then pass that to Highways and Parking Services, who can retrospectively, potentially, that's an obstruction. It's not a licensing matter, regretfully, and we can't take it in. It's a police or particularly highways.
Thank you, I will do that. But as I say, because my guidance was Penny James, ASB, and maybe I should have spoke to Darren, because Darren's always been a good guidance as well. But it all goes to Penny James. Thank you.
Do you have any further questions for Belinda?
Just a comment.
Okay.
So furthermore to that, I think you need to go to the police because it's not a parking infraction because if there's no yellow line there, it's not a parking infraction. So it's police matter.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ryder, and thank you for what you've submitted and your addition. That's been really helpful. I will now come to your witnesses, see if there's anything that they would like to add. Just to let you know, I will give you a chance at the end to do summing up. So you don't have to do it all in one go. I'll give you the opportunity at the end. So I will... No. I will start with Gillian Collins. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Thank you. I have got a summing up. If you prefer me to wait to the end, I'm happy to do that. Going back to the noise monitoring forms, as your colleague said about the lack of them being returned, to try and involve people in bringing this about today has been really tricky, because, as Belinda said in one part of her statement, people just feel it's something they don't want to be involved with or put their head above the parapet on this issue. And again, coming back to the noise monitoring forms, you have to be very mindful. If they're not completed all the time on a consistent basis and you drop off after 4 weeks, that file, case, gets closed. And people just think, what's the point? Why am I doing this? What is the point? So this is where we find ourselves now. And as I say, the guidance we've had has been very much since, the information's been pushing to the ASB teams. But I'll wait until the end and do a summary. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
No questions. I was going to make a comment. But...
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barrington, is there anything that you would like to add?
If the panel don't mind, I'd just like to set a little bit of context, just so you understand you heard a very good readout of what we're actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis. My family have lived in Queen Street since 1946, and the premises now known as Rocky's Bar was converted. It's a farm labourer's cottage from the 18th century that was first converted to a bar in around 1970. As you know, there was a new license issued in 2006. That was after a Mr. Beresford had spent a lot of money redeveloping the rear of the property to create a restaurant, full kitchen and so on. And I think that's one of the reasons why there were so few restrictions placed at that time, because first of all, there was no real track record, but secondly, it was to be an upmarket restaurant and therefore didn't require door staff and so on. Between then and lockdown, we had very, very occasional challenges. In fact, at one point, my son was working next door under Jason Mead. I can't remember the guy who was cooking at the time, but he was actually working the premises. We had no problems. Occasional things around Carnival and occasional things around Christmas. Beer festival once a year, and that was it. That was the limit of the challenges that we faced as residents until lockdown. My wife and I have actually lived back in the family home for 35 years. We came back to basically to be with her parents and to care for them as they progressed through their later years. Father-in-law dying just before lockdown, and mother-in-law developing advanced Alzheimer's the year before. If you saw the notes that I put into environmental health, you'll see part of the problem we were having was that with her Alzheimer's, the noise outside was triggering events, and we were having real problems with her. And she passed just over 18 months ago. During lockdown, our only salvation, being home carers with no support, was our garden. And we spent several £1,000s restoring the garden, which had fallen to rack and ruin through my father-in-law's ill health. And it became our sanctuary, the place that we went to, and we put in a gazebo and barbecue and all those kinds of things. And it's a place which we are completely denied access to at weekends. The noise up until 11 o'clock, and Mr. Rocker has been true to his word. Apart from very occasional instances, there have been nobody outside after 11. But with the doors open, or with the doors opening and closing and loud music inside, the waves of sound that come out through the rear of the property, plus up to 30 people in the beer garden enjoying themselves, has meant that our garden has become a no-go zone area at weekends. We're unable to open any of our windows at weekends, which are all double glazed, but we can still hear the music. And even when our bedroom is to the rear of the property, my daughter's bedroom is to the front. So we're impacted on both sides. It's an old labourer's cottage. It's only 1 room deep for most of the property. The evidence that you've heard, it has been a serious impact on the quality of our lives and our mental health. Suffering sleep pattern deprivation, because we don't know when we're going to be woken up. And as you heard on the recent incidents of Good Friday, a Christian high day, we were kept awake until 3 a.m. with drum and bass, thump, 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 which goes against the inaudible reference within the original licensing application, but unfortunately there doesn't seem to be an official definition of what inaudible means. My view is you can't hear it. That apparently is not what is viewed as inaudible. So that's one of those challenges. So we would like to see some stricter controls. I've got video of the door staff engaging in banter with the people entering and leaving the premises, including at one point chatting them up. Really didn't seem to have a sense of what their purpose was in those premises at that time. And as you heard, to have our New Year's Eve celebrations disturbed by a hammer incident outside in the street. And although, yes, Mr. Rock and the team had, it happened outside of the premises, most of the people involved had been in the premises at the start of the initial incident. The challenge, I think, is that Gillingham is not geared for a nighttime economy. The police that responded on New Year's Eve came from Somerset. Dorset didn't have anybody available. Because we only have a custody suite in Weymouth at that time of night, it meant that the police officers themselves were then taken off shift basically for the rest of that night, because they had to drive the arrested person to Weymouth process before they could get back onto patrol. So I think there is a whole systems thing here that needs looking at. If we're going to have a nighttime economy in Gillingham, it needs to be properly resourced from emergency services. But also we need some stricter controls to enable us to start to recover some of our life. Thank you.
What are your suggestions, Mr. Barrington, to improve the situation? What are your suggestions to improve the situation?
I am of that generation where going out for a drum and bass night until 3 a.m. does not appeal. I think if these things were occasional rather than every weekend, if there was sufficient advance notification, and I know it's on Mr. Rock's website, but that's not the same as some notification to local residents. I think if there were properly trained professional door staff at all times when it is going to be open after 11 o'clock, I think if it was possible to stop new entrants to the premises after 11, because people go to try and get in, and for right reasons, Mr. Rock sometimes refuses people entry after hours, but that does, of course, cause additional challenges. So I think those things would help, and I think if there were external noise monitoring equipment to identify the volume that things are being played at. And I don't know how Mr. Rock and partner, what the hearing's like, but it affects us outside, so it must be really loud in there. So some form of external noise monitoring that's linked to the control systems within the premises to turn it off if it gets too loud. Those are a few of the things that I think would help, but also a sense of responsibility. A number of interactions we've had went in about the vomiting, but not my problem. Litter, not my problem. Council deal with that. And so I think responsibility and accountability for what goes on in the surroundings of the bar, not just within the bar itself, would be beneficial.
Really helpful, thank you. One of the ones that obviously causes the community concern is the urinating in the streets. What's your suggestions on that one?
For things like urinating in the street, it's not something I've ever done myself. It's not something I've ever understood the need to when Mr. Rock has toilets within the facility, but it just indicates for me the level of drunkenness that is going on, that people aren't aware of their behaviour in the street outside. One of the things that we are looking at doing now is putting more lighting around our property and probably installing CCTV as well. We don't want to do that. You know, that kind of feels like we're entering into Fortress Knox type, Fort Knox type environment. We don't want to do it, but we're going to have to, unless we see a change in behaviour. It's really not nice waking up and having to go and throw buckets of soapy water over your own property.
How often have you met with the management of the bar, cafe, nightclub with Scott Rock and his team?
We met a couple of times early on, and we did actually have a public meeting where there were about 35 people attended, a mixture of people in favour and those who were having challenges. We came up with some suggestions. It turned into it started off as quite an aggressive meeting. We managed to turn it into something which became quite thoughtful, and we came up with a number of suggestions and recommendations that could be made. We went and had meetings. Nothing came of any of them. We've registered a number of issues over time, and unfortunately it's not happened. The only time I've really seen Mr. Rock since is when I've been outside in the street helping the police deal with incidents, which has now been 3 times. I'm an ex-police officer. I can't not go out and help.
Do you think that regular meetings would be of use and benefit, but regular community meetings once a quarter or something like that?
So long as it isn't used as an excuse to do nothing now. I think as part of an ongoing process, I think that could be beneficial, but there has to be goodwill on both sides. And at the moment, we don't feel as residents that it's coming the other way.
Do you have contact information, phone numbers and email addresses of Scott's premises, the Rock's premises there, that are readily available to anybody who wishes to complain at any time of night?
Yes, I've got his phone number on my mobile phone, but unfortunately, I don't know whether it's to do with the volume that's going on in there, but regularly it doesn't get picked up. It does sometimes go through, so,
Thank you. That's all from me for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Amelia, I'll come back to you in a minute because obviously your statement was separate to what was in the witness statement, which is why I wanted to come to all 3 of you together. I will now ask Mr. Rock. Mr. Rock, do you have any questions with regards to the review that was submitted and the 2 what the witnesses have put in that review? Do you have any questions for them?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Firstly, Councillor Rideout, was that? You've asked the committee to review the opening hours, but you didn't suggest what hours you'd like them to be reviewed to, and you also stated you'd like door staff at the premises at all times during opening hours. I'd just like to ask you if you would like to clarify. You only mean Friday and Saturday evenings and not a Monday evening or a Sunday afternoon, which are obviously in every premises in the country much quieter, and I don't think many, if any, of the complaints are actually about Monday, Tuesday nights or Sunday afternoons. So could you clarify what sort of opening hours you are asking the committee to sort of impose, and clarify how many door staff and what times and days of the week you're after for them, please?
Thank you, Mr. Rock. Councillor Rideout.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry? The times, obviously, I don't think this is necessary to go on so late. Your latest is 3 o'clock in the morning. I think 2 o'clock would be adequate by the time people have left, especially in this residential area, possibly even earlier than that, but everyone gone by 2 o'clock, to at least give the residents some peace, especially at the weekend. Obviously in the week it's quieter, but when there's an event on earlier, closing time, and last orders, and then people leave nice and quietly. Sorry.
The timings that you refer to when you say 2 a.m, you would want everybody to have left the premises and it be shut and closed by 2 a.m, and not as opposed to you'd expect everybody to be gone from that premises by 2 a.m.
Given the location of the premises in a residential street with lots of families and elderly, I think 2 a.m, the premises closed would be far better, yes. Well, I think it tends to be weekends that they're open longer. So, yeah, it would be every evening by then. Not that they have to stay open to 2 in the weekdays, but yeah, especially for an event. Security, I think we need, especially when there's events on at the weekend, we need 2 door staff on the front facing Queen Street to deal with any eventuality, and door supervision at the back, just to make sure the door is not left wedged open until 11 o'clock when the rear garden is closed. And also to supervise smoking and smokers.
Thank you. Mr. Rock, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, that does. That answers the question I had. I think I saw a couple of nodding heads, or I certainly saw one. Do the residents, would you agree or disagree with what Councillor Rideout has asked for regarding the opening hours there?
Hello. As I say, it is always a compromise. Personally, when we say about 2 a.m, we're very much referring to weekends, Friday and Saturday nights, when it's the nightclub hours. Most evenings, the bar shuts, I think maybe 12, 11 or 12? 11, yeah, 11, which is perfectly acceptable. It's got to a point where I think it ought to be shut at 11 o'clock on a Saturday and Friday night. However, some allowances have to be made and compromises. I personally feel 1 a.m. closing on a Friday and Saturday morning or Sunday morning by then would be more acceptable. If it is a compromise that it's closed at 2 a.m, we can't have the lingering, we can't have the loitering. People have to be gone off the street, really, by sort of 1:30. How that would be managed, I don't know. Thank you.
Did you want that question for Mr. Barrington as well?
I don't mind. It looks like he was ready to answer it, so...
Thank you. As you may have heard, during the week we have no problems. Occasional parking issues, but no real problems. It is an older audience or customer base during the week, and it is weekends where the problems occur. For me, I think 1 a.m. Emptied by then, it would be reasonable, given it's every week. If it was once a month, something happened to 2 a.m, I wouldn't have a problem, but it's the fact that it isn't every week. The last couple of weeks have been glorious. There hasn't been anything on at weekend, and we've been able to just relax. And that has given me a muscle memory of how nice it can be in our garden and around Queen Street when there isn't anything on. So I would like to see, potentially once a month till 2. I don't have a problem with that, but the rest of the time, I think midnight is probably late enough. Even when there is a band, the band finishes and then often there's a disco afterwards. It kind of doesn't seem to make sense if you're having a band to then go on to that. But I mean, Mr. Rock is the businessman here running his business. But for me, 1 a.m. really is the limit. And we've now got somebody living with us who works at the co-op, has to get up for 6 a.m. shifts. It's impossible. with the kind of disturbance that's going on. It's, you know, it doesn't feel responsible.
Mr. Rock, do you have any further questions?
Not at this time, no.
Thank you. Catherine, do you have any questions?
Only to clarify, no car parking has been mentioned several times, and that's, as you know, we can't take that into consideration. And I think, Mr. Barrington, you referred to a condition as being inaudible. There isn't a condition about inaudible at another property. There is music between the hours of 2300 and 10 o'clock the following day, that no music or amplified noise, including speech, should be relayed via speakers external, or music should take place, and doors and windows being closed, but there's nothing about inaudibility at premises. All right, just to clarify.
Thank you. Okay. I will now come on to Amelia Barrington. Have you got anything that you would like to add? Because obviously your submission was separate. So if you've got anything to add, that'd be great.
Yeah. Hello, thank you for having me. I am a fourth generation family member who has lived at Rolton House. I lived there for 23 years before moving just before lockdown. When I returned to live next door at the other side of Rolton House, which was my grandparents' side, with my partner last year, when I was growing up there, when it was the Smouldering Boulder, we had no problems. On a rare occasion, like my father said, there was beer festivals and everything. We have had many problems with people standing outside the house, underneath our window, shouting, talking really loudly, and also fighting. As my father also said, we've got a lovely garden at the rear of our property that we are unable to use in the summer months due to people congregating on the raised deck, smoking at weekends. I have also got a number of audio and video files as evidence. For example, I was kept awake until 2:10 on the 4th of June by people outside the front of the pub, noisily leaving in the early hours. My partner, who is working at the co-op, has been kept awake due to the people outside being really loud. I also work a job from Tuesday to Saturday, where I come home at 6 p.m. on a Saturday, and I am a matron at a boarding school, so I'm up until 10 p.m. And have to stay kind of semi-awake because I have children knocking on my door. I also would like to come home on a Saturday, be able to get to sleep at a reasonable hour, but unable to do so due to the patrons outside smoking and being very loud. My parents have also spent thousands of pounds on double glazing to help with minimising the noise, but even with this, we can still hear everything going on outside, including car doors banging and engines revving as customers and vans that park outside on the pavement leave in the early hours. Sometimes there are dull staff present, but they don't seem to take any responsibility for keeping the noise to a minimum and regularly engage in banter with customers, adding to the noise. My partner and I are getting married in July and are looking forward to starting a life together in my family home, but the problems caused by Rocky's Bar is making us question the decision to live in Gillingham. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions?
Amelia, what's the solution with the garden at the back of the people there? Because we all like to sit out in a garden. We like to have a drink outside on a nice summer's evening. But I appreciate there's an inconvenience and a disruption and an intrusion for you in your rear garden. What's the solution?
I would probably suggest, especially at weekends, maybe to have a member of staff out there just keeping an eye on people, making sure that they're being sensible, and that, yeah, just someone out there just keeping an eye on people, making sure they're, you know, keeping the volume to a minimum and just being sensible.
What time of night are people in the rear garden at the moment till?
I mean, it's from 7 p.m. to sometimes there are people out there after 11. My partner goes out sometimes because he does smoke himself, and there have been people out there after 11 o'clock when the doors are meant to be shut, smoking.
So do you think it would be reasonable, proportionate, justified and appropriate to have a time when people don't go in the rear garden? And if so, what would that time be in your mind?
I would probably suggest after 10 p.m. I mean, I go to bed early because I've had a long week. And I mean, being kept awake as well due to the loud noise of music is not helpful. We've got thin walls. We're attached to Rocky's bar. We can hear absolutely everything. We can even hear stuff up in Rocky's apartment up above as well. We're getting kept awake by their dogs barking as well.
So that's an interesting challenge for us all, isn't it, when you're attached to the building? Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rock, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do believe in that statement. You said that you were awake at 2:10 on the 4th of June. Is that what you read out? Your other statement here says that you didn't move in until October. Okay. No, that's absolutely fine. I'd also like to say for the record, obviously the 11 o'clock close in the garden that everyone keeps mentioning, we as a bar have voluntarily done that. We've never been told to, asked to, or anything. Neighbours may have asked, but from a police licensing or any other formal issue, we've never been told we have to. That was something we did off our own back to try and assist the neighbours, to try and make their lives easier and cause us to not be here. Obviously didn't work. Okay. Yep, that's fine.
Thank you. And yeah, fully aware that it's a recommendation from yourself. Obviously, I've looked at the licence to see what your conditions are on there. Catherine, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you all. I will come back to you to see if you have any questions for Mr. Rock, and just to make it clear, obviously, there are questions that warrant an answer. But Mr. Rock will then have his say. Once we're all done, then obviously I'll give you the chance to sum up. Okay, thank you. Mr. Rock, we have read your submission. Thank you very much for that. That's been very useful. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, I'm glad you have read my submission, because that saves me reading out for about 45 minutes, and clearly the residents and council Rideout have read it as well. So that basically saves most of the time, and I think I've covered most of the issues raised, as I said before, in that statement, and you should be aware of that. I would just like to sort of add to that, that as at present we are a 24-hour licensed venue. As a bar, we are willing to sacrifice voluntarily, if possible, or you might tell us we have to, or something, and go to a 2 o'clock licensed venue. I noticed Councillor Rideout said 2 o'clock was fine, and as we went along the line, it was 2 o'clock, then 1 o'clock, and then 12 o'clock there. We have to run a business. I understand there have been reports from 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. We would be happy to voluntarily surrender the 24-hour part of that licence. Regarding door staff, again, I did cover parts of that in our licence, in my statement. From a business point of view, it's going to be almost impossible to run the bar with 2 door staff stood outside the front, 2 door staff stood in the garden, and you know, the door staff are there to protect the customers, majoritively the customers of the venue and the venue, as well as the disturbance on Queen Street. So they can't be everywhere at once, and they have to manage their time effectively. I think I did cover it in my statement, but on the 2nd of September, that seems to be a sticking point. Yes, me and one of my doormen, on that night we had myself, who was a qualified doorman, and 2 others. Me and one of the doormen did leave to go down the street. We did have, we didn't have a third doorman, but we had staff there with radio contact with us. Do the licensing, do the residents, do they want the doorman to stand at the door, or do they want them to deal with an issue that's 20, 30 metres away from the bar because it was caused by the bar? Because one of them's complaining that we left the door unattended, one of them's complaining that we weren't stood by the door. They sort of conflict. But we can only do what we can do. We have done everything and more than we need to do as per our licence since day one. Every time I've had contact with John Bean, with anyone from licensing, I think, is it Darren? I've been in contact with you once or twice. I have acted on as best as I possibly can everything I've been advised, asked, and recommended to do. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions? Okay.
Thank you for that. That's useful to know. Thank you. So you think that a 2 a.m. closure would be potentially viable for your business, and you could make that work for the community as well?
Yes, I do think that that would work for us. I know we have done some events much later, or intended to do some events much later, and have had future plans of doing events much later. We've postponed them. We haven't advertised them yet because of this. We didn't want to advertise an event and then go back on it if something happened here today. So yeah, 2 o'clock we would be able to run our business effectively if we lost the 24-hour but could stay open till 2 o'clock.
Thank you. I do note from that how much money you take between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. So personally, I note that. Do you think it's viable for your business to stop new entrants coming in at 2300 hours after that time? Because people are either in, otherwise they're going to go elsewhere to the pubs, tank up there, and then come to you when they're 3/4 cut before they start. Would that be a consideration that you could stop new people coming in after 11?
We have tried that in the past. When we first opened in August 21, we did shut at 11 p.m. every Friday, every Saturday. And then made the decision, I can't remember when, it was probably March or April 22, to start staying open till 2 o'clock. When we did that, from that day, we did stop people coming in after 11. We said, we are now staying open till 2, however, you have to be in by 11. It didn't work, and it caused issues out on the street. Someone turns up at 11:30, they're already drunk, they've been to another establishment. They knock on the door. We can't lock the door, fire safety, so the door's open, has to stay unlocked for safety reasons. They knock on the door, can I come in? No. Why? Try and explain to a drunk person you can't come in because it's 11 o'clock. They don't know what time it is, or they might not know what time it is. Or if you've had a few beers, you get a bit more argumentative. And that would cause issues on the street. We could advertise it as best we could, but we have tried it when we first started staying open till 2. It didn't work. It caused issues in the street, and we were turning away a lot of business. It didn't work for our business. We were turning away a lot of business past 11 o'clock.
I think you've got a problem there then, and Catherine may wish to come in there, but if you're allowing people coming in under the influence of alcohol, that's your problem. You should not be allowing people in. And there may be a problem in the street, and I think that's down to you to publicise and advertise that nobody will come in after 2300 hours. Otherwise, you're letting them in when they're drunk. Catherine, would you like just to comment on that, please?
Yeah, you're quite right. If someone approaches it as drunk, then you shouldn't really be letting them in because they are drunk. You don't want them in your premises. If you've got an advertised last entry, whatever it will be, people are usually quite compliant with it. Most nightclubs have it, whether it be 11, 12, 1 o'clock, depending on when the closing time is. But like I say, if they're drunk and you've got the door staff on, then the door staff should be letting them in.
Thank you for that, Catherine. That's very helpful. Mr. Rock, do you understand that now, that that's a problem you need to publicise and advertise?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I would like to clarify. I didn't. We don't serve drunk customers. We have cut many people off. I've got a book here full of instances where we've done that. But there's a difference between a level of drunk where someone has had too much and needs to stop drinking, or had a couple of beers, which is almost the legal limit to drive. I think, depending on your metabolism, you can drive on 1 or 1.5 pints, but they still become a bit more argumentative. I did not mean confident. I did not mean we allow people into our premises while they're drunk.
As a former police officer, I wouldn't be suggesting people have 2 drinks and say they're fit to drive, because they're probably not. As a subjective thing that you need to be cautious over. Thank you for that. Rear garden. Would you consider shutting the rear garden to punters at 2200 hours?
Yes, I would. Like I say, we've voluntarily done it at 11 o'clock. I would do it at 10 o'clock. However, like I did say in my statement, the issue which is mentioned, if people hanging around in the streets, turning up with their cars, I was actually leaning more to the side of keep the garden open and don't let anyone out the front door. After 11 o'clock, if you walk out the front door, you're not able to return. It stops people that are barred walking past. It stops the assault on the 2nd of September would not have happened if our customers had not been stood there and a passerby started that issue. There's a lot of complaints about noise in the street out the front. If we said at 11 o'clock, walk out the front door, you can't come in for the rest of the night, and allowed our customers to drink in the back garden, to smoke in the back garden in small numbers. Again, voluntarily, we allow 5 people into our smoking area. Again, if we allowed that, it would cause a lot less hassle on the street. People wouldn't need to hang around. People wouldn't be littering. So we would do it at 10 o'clock if we need to, although I think it would be better to shut the front door at 11 o'clock and allow customers in small numbers to smoke out the back door.
So ask Mr. Barrington what his response to people closing the front and doing the back, because I don't personally know the layout there, and I would prefer the expert opinion on that. Could that work?
The problem is that the building itself has no internal structure, so the entry and access points, front and rear, are single door straight into the premises. So there's no vestibule to trap sound, with people going through some kind of almost airlock type approach, as you see in a lot of licensed premises. So anybody going out onto the back means that the rear doors would be open and the full volume of the music would then be blasted out across the garden area. And that will reignite issues across the river at Barnaby Mead, where a number of people were having some issues with this is not Mr. Rock's issue, but the property is slightly raised. You've got then the floodplain below and then a rise and buildings on the other side. So you've got basically a tunnel effect across the back. And this is also, again, not Mr. Rock's problem, it's topology. But Queen Street itself is a very narrow, with all of the buildings very close to the road. It creates a tunnel effect for sound. So it doesn't matter how it is, sound will travel in both directions. If it were people out the back, that would affect us and 1 or 2 others more, because we sleep at the back rear of the property. At the moment, it's affecting those who sleep on the Queen Street end. There are more of those, so if it's a numbers game, it's probably more reasonable to do it at the back. But I believe there is a smoking area. I just don't know that it's been properly used by people. There is something at the side, isn't there? You've got something? No? And that's the challenge. There isn't a formal smoking area. So, I mean, if it was kept, if there were numbers were limited and there were strict controls about people, I mean, I think if people leave the premises, they shouldn't be let back in. I've worked in licensed premises myself, and my wife and I were musicians before we retired. We've seen this in all its glory around this coast. I think there are some challenges here that the physical structure of the building does not help. It's single-skin farm labourer's cottage with an extension, no soundproofing at all, and that's half the trouble. And then you say you've got the topology issues of people standing on a raised platform at the back, broadcasting sound.
That's really helpful, thank you. Going live, yeah, I'm going live. Thank you, that's really helpful, thank you. Mr. Rock, is it viable then to have no readmittance? If people want to go out, then they leave? And could you control the numbers in the rear garden going in there using your smoking shelter? Is that managed? Could you have half a dozen maximum, one out, one in after that?
Yeah, that's completely possible. We have, like I said, when we first started opening till 2 a.m., we did have a 11 o'clock no entry, so it was manageable to not let people in the front door, and therefore we didn't let people out and back in. So we have managed that sort of policy in the past, and it is manageable to only allow 5 or 6 people in the rear garden to smoke, which is more manageable because that will be 5 or 6 customers, not 5 or 6 customers plus 2 passers-by plus anyone else, plus 1 person that's barred, plus their mate that's waiting to give them. It's more manageable to keep them in the rear garden, and very easily manageable. We've got 1 door in and out. We can have 1 member of staff stand in there. It doesn't necessarily need to be an SIA registered door staff. Anyone is capable of closing a door and counting to 5 or 6.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. A couple of more questions. Well, a few more questions I've got yet to finish. You don't own the building. Is the building listed at all? And is there any way you can do adaptations to build a airlock front or back on that building? And is there any way of reducing the sound for those in the smoking shelter for your neighbours?
No, I don't own the building. I therefore don't know if it's listed. Mr. Barrington probably knows better than I do whether it's listed or not. There's your answer. I could quite possibly get permissions from the landlord to make adaptations to the building if necessary. It would then have to be a research of costing and how best to implement it and what best to do in that case, but the building's not listed. I could make adaptations if necessary.
Would you consider that, please, as an option? Because as you can appreciate, and I'm sure you've been to many to nightclubs in the past or stood outside them, the moment you open that door, you let a wave of noise come out. And we've all got our particular taste of music, some to our desire and some are not. But if you're stood there and people open the door to go out for a smoke, to leave or to park, whatever reason, there's a wave of music, noise that comes out.
Yeah, I would consider that. As I did say in my original statement, if we did move the smoking area and use the back garden, we could rearrange the bar firstly and face our speakers in the front area of the bar, which would significantly lower the noise from the speakers going out the back door. If I stand outside the back door with a decibelometer, we get readings of about 60, 70 off the top of my head. If we stand out the front door, it's more the people talking that's triggering the decibelometer. If there's no one out the front, that you can barely, with the front door closed, you can barely hear the music. If we rearrange our bar, put the speakers in the front, it will significantly reduce the noise going through the back door, and this might not be necessary to cost our business anything else when we can fix it by moving things.
Please be assured that we as a panel do understand the business viability, that you need to make it viable, which is why we're here to try and work with the community to listen to your concerns. A couple of other questions I've got. You might be surprised. Dogs. You've got dogs. Do you allow them into the rear garden at night and their barking could upset the neighbours?
Yes, I have 2 dogs. They were allowed into the beer garden. Obviously, due to for public safety, we don't want to bring the dogs down when we've got customers in the bar. So yes, regularly it was 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, Friday, Saturday, evenings, mornings, that we were letting them out to the beer garden. I did receive an email from Environmental Health, I believe, saying that they had complaints about that. Since that date, again, I haven't let the dogs out into the garden late at night. We now walk them down the road out the front of the garden.
I'm less bothered about the dogs in the rear garden. I'm more bothered about them barking in the rear garden. I think there's a difference there, and that may become a training issue for them, which might give you something else to do in your spare time.
I'll pass that to my wife if that's all right. She is a dog trainer. If you'd like us to answer a dog training question. Okay.
The point I've got is community meetings, meeting with the community on regular occurrences. Is that something you would consider, perhaps quarterly meetings or something, and arranging them and coming up with minutes that could perhaps be passed to the licensing department for their information?
Yeah, we would be willing to host community meetings every quarter if necessary. Another idea we came up with is email chains. I know some licensed venues use email chains, so we would take down any email addresses of any residents and then we could post them. I think Mr. Barrington said that, yeah, they can see things on Facebook, but if residents want to give us their emails, we will email them a list of our events, the times, and sort of predicted noise levels and timings, if that helps the residents.
I think that would be a great help for phone numbers to be published, emails to be published and circulated, and regular meetings so that the meetings can take place. I think the face-to-face contact is always helpful. It takes the sting out of things if you've got to look at somebody in the square in the eye and things there. People say things on social media and emails that they perhaps wouldn't always say face-to-face. So I think all those are accessible. Well, I've come to an end for the moment.
Thank you. My first one is just a comment. Obviously, you live at the premises and it has to be a work-life balance for you as well. I understand I worked in a pub for years, had dogs. You know, at the end of a very, very, very busy shift, the last thing you want to do is pop on the lead and take them out, because I fully understand and get that you need a work-life balance as well. So I'm not going to get too het up on that. With regards to your, you've talked about that you'd be content with a 2 a.m. closure. Obviously, you've got a 24-hour licence. With regards to your 2 a.m. closures, realistically, in a month, how often do you stay open for events later than 2 a.m.?
Currently, during a month, we very rarely stay open past it, probably once a month. For our events, we had our drum and bass night in March. January, February, we haven't done anything because it's always the quieter months. We're not going to invest money in many bands or DJs. But it is something that we've done on New Year. We always plan to do on New Year, Carnival night, busier nights of the year. But probably once a month we actually go past the sort of 2 o'clock closing time.
Reason for my question is because obviously I know, and you'd be fully aware, that obviously you can apply for a temporary events notice should you want to run past an event of 2 a.m. And obviously with those temporary events notices, if they are granted as they are, then obviously you have that doesn't adhere to any condition on your licence. That temporary events notice potentially overrides your licence. So with that in mind, obviously the only people that can object to a temporary events notice is the police and is environmental protection, which would generally, sometimes they do say, yes, you know, we're happy with it, providing they have all their conditions. So this is where I'm coming from, is if there is the thought there that you would be wanting perhaps, I don't know, on special occasions to stay open, particularly later. My concern would be running under a temporary events notice that obviously you have no jurisdiction to run to your what your conditions are on your licence. So would you be looking for, say, if New Year bank holiday fell on a particular day, i.e. Saturday or Friday or Saturday, would you be looking at, you know, to reviewing those times on your licence?
Yeah, that would be useful for New Year, and certainly New Year and Carnival night, which is normally first weekend of October, to have those additional hours in the licence. But we don't intend to do bank holidays anymore. I didn't like our drum and bass night on the 22nd of March any more than any of the residents. It's not my type of music. I did it for the customers. and we won't be doing one of those until 3 or 4 o'clock again. If we did do it, that would be a normal closing hours. So the only 2 nights we would want to stay open past 2 is New Year and Carnival night.
Thank you. Just going to jot that down. What dispersal policy do you have in place?
We normally call last orders at the bar at 1:15. We stop serving we stop serving at the latest at 1:30. Normally it's about 1:20 because of the numbers of customers in there. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes to serve anyone that wants a last drink. At that point, we tell them to drink up, and we don't let them leave with plastic cups anymore because of the littering. We do have an on and off license, as you're aware, but we don't want the extra hassle. We don't want to cause a problem for the neighbours, so we don't allow customers to take drinks out, even in plastic glasses, at the end of the night. And then we ask everyone to leave once they are outside the premises. Either myself, my wife, or any of the other bar staff or door staff do go out, ask them to move on, tell them to move on. They're members of the public in a public space. We can't, unfortunately, do much more than that. But we are out there until they leave Queen Street. We are outside the front asking them to move on.
Thank you. Did you have one?
I've got some more. I've got a few more. Thank you.
Yes.
Tell me about your sound management plan.
What sort of sound management plan are you asking for? We monitor our music and bands with a decibelometer, if that's what you're asking. If you're asking about any soundproofing in the bar, I haven't personally installed any.
I'm just conscious that you've said that you don't like the drum and bass. Well, I couldn't tell you what it is, let alone anything else. But the variety of music is generally irrelevant. It's more the sound that's coming out of there. As you know, the drum and beat will make more sound. Have you considered, and would you consider having a sound report on your music from what the impact on the residents outside? Having one done and having perhaps some external audio devices fitted that could help you manage your music and the volume?
Yeah, we could have external devices in there to monitor. I believe in one of the statements, the ASB team had 2 weeks of noise monitoring and found nothing sufficient. We do have an amplifier. It is locked to a certain noise level, so even if we turn it up to max, it will only go to a certain level. I have a video recording of that, as mentioned in my statement. Unfortunately, it is on my other phone, but I can get that emailed over to you if necessary. But our amplifier doesn't allow the music to go over 80 decibels, which I believe is the sound limit for loud music. If you search what is loud music, 80 decibels is the classification for loud music.
Catherine, can you comment on that, please, on the 80 decibels and the same?
I believe it'd be Darren.
I'm happy to pass that over to, or you can pass it.
Hi, no, there isn't an actual upper limit that we would put. It'd be specific to type of premises, as you mentioned, in terms of the noise spill from the premises. Every premises is different, so there isn't a specific limit put on particular premises.
What I see here is we're trying to mediate between the local community who have to live with the noise and the noise that you're generating, and a plan in place. I appreciate you've got noise limiters in place, and I think that's obviously a good start for the community. But I think anything we can do, they know that you're keeping the noise down and the noise is being monitored, might help. I don't know, Catherine, would it make a difference? Would a sound management plan help on this occasion, do you think?
It may do. I mean, I think, again, it's probably an environmental health matter for noise management plan or sound management plans. We do have them, and we've had them in reviews in the past. If you remember, we had one last year where a noise management plan has to be submitted before the start of every season, but that was outside music. But whether it's something that Darren can comment on better than I can.
Written noise management plans for internal is not so common. We have them for external events, but not inside. Would it help? Yeah, you need to get an acoustic consultant in, probably to advise on the structure of the building and how it can be better attenuated. It's also worth noting, as Mr. Vox mentioned, there is a condition regarding a noise limiter. The condition is as old as the licence and would be difficult to enforce as it is at the moment. It is worth mentioning that we have monitored from premises across the road with our noise recording equipment and didn't find a statutory nuisance.
So they could have had quieter music on those particular nights rather than a general thing. And I don't know who can answer my next question. Is there a pub watch in Gillingham, and is Rocky's Bar a member of that pub watch?
There is no pub watch in Gillingham now. I think there's only 2 licensed premises, like that's the Red Lion and Rocky, so there is no pub watch. I think the nearest one would be Shaftesbury, but they meet very infrequently as well.
Sorry, point of clarification, there's also the Phoenix
And the Dolphin.
and the Dolphin. The Dolphin is on the outskirts and is really a restaurant now. It's not a pub anymore because it can't make any money. So there's really only the 3, yeah.
May I quickly interject with regard... Sorry.
Questions for Mr. Rock?
No, at the moment.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Rock? I don't have any further questions. Thank you. I will now move it over to those that have made representation. If you would, do any of you have any questions for Mr. Rock? If you do, if you could raise your hand.
Thank you. A little bit confused about the compromise on the closure. With regards to last orders at 1:15 a.m. and closing at 2, can that not just be tweaked forward if they're on the sort of last legs and last knock-ins to purchase alcohol or whatever? Could that be moved so they actually start leaving the premises by 1:30 a.m.?
Yes, it could. However, I think our peak customer numbers, as it were, is normally peaks around 12 o'clock midnight. People are still coming in till that point, and then people start leaving after that point. Our peak numbers are at 12 o'clock. The earlier we close, the more people there are still left in the building that need to disperse. At 12 o'clock, we might have 50. At 12:30, we might have 40. At 1 o'clock, we might have 30. At 2 o'clock, we might have 20. So do you want 50 people leaving at a certain time, or do you want 20 people leaving a little bit later? People naturally go home. A lot of people don't want to be there at the end of the night. They want to get home and go home early. If we bring the earlier we close, the more people will leave at the same time.
Thank you.
If I could just add, yeah, we had the customer arrive who parked across our drive at 12:16 a.m. on Saturday morning. Obviously made a wise choice not to drive home, left her car, but blocking us in. The other concern that I'm still a bit unclear about is you say you both go out at closing and try and remove people pitched up on the doorstep and getting them to leave the premises. And you sort of said, well, you know, we do our best, but why are they not going? Why are they just still mingling? Because I reported, I think it must have been the week of the 20th of February. It was a Friday night, so it could have been the Friday before and the Friday of that week. At 2 a.m, I woke up to this dreadful noise out front. Unfortunately, mainly females squawking, screaming and loud voices. And I made a call to the police. I said, as far as I know, there's not a fight, but I need this reported as antisocial behaviour. It's not acceptable. And that's what kind of lingers all the time, is this sort of, what are they doing there? Why are they there? Why are they not being ushered off?
I can't comment on that specific incident. I haven't got anything written down for what you said either last Friday or the Friday before. But it is a public area, and sometimes people will walk a friend home one way and then walk back down Queen Street the other way to get their friend home safely. So sometimes these people will be walking around town a lot later than we close. We've had it before where we've closed at 2 and heard people outside at 3:30. They were out of our bar at 2 o'clock. We can't be held responsible for someone an hour and a half later. I've actually prepared, I should have said this in my original statement, I've prepared a document earlier with sort of a more professional log sheet. We do have a logbook, but a more professional log sheet, which does state on it a time for us to fill in last orders. We'd write when the bar was closed. We actually got a box on there saying when we've cleared Queen Street. It's to list all of any door staff we have and all Challenge 25 IDs. We do this in here in an informal way. I've prepared a document which, if necessary, we're probably going to use it because it will make our lives and reporting incidents a lot easier. It's also got a section on there to log neighbours' complaints, which I can show the committee or the residents if anyone wants to have a look at that.
Thank you. Do you have any further questions?
Well, just briefly, you said about logging neighbours' complaints. I know some neighbours don't approach you anymore because they feel there's no point. You very kindly, I only now message you when somebody's parked across my drive, and you are normally very kind and ask that customer to move, and they move their car. Sometimes you say, well, they're not my customer, and you can't be held accountable to every car every customer. I get that, but they normally move. It's a matter of last August I messaged you and then you replied back and accused me of harassment, so therefore that's why I only messaged you about the car situation, because people can't read my please keep my driveway clear signs. And I know quite a lot of neighbours won't take up that conversation with you currently or have done because they feel they don't get a response or you're not listening. So it would be good if there was that communication, and we would all be quite happy with that.
I do apologise for the message I sent last year. It had been a long day, and as mentioned multiple times, car park isn't a licensing issue. However, like I said, I've got a form set up, and we can take email, phone call, or a Facebook message, and we can record and log all of the complaints. I've asked Environmental Health and Licensing multiple times, I know it's data protection, for a list of complaints that they've received. I've obviously got them now because we're here, but it would help us if we knew what residents were complaining about. If I don't know that on Saturday this time this happened because only the residents were outside, I can't act on it. I very rarely receive, I've never received a message via our Facebook page or an email from Mr. Barrington. I've had a couple of phone calls with him. I have received messages from myself as well as Mike and Mark and a couple of other residents on the street. And I have received them, and I do act upon them as and when I can with the powers I've got. And I'd like to start recording them going forward.
Thank you.
Sorry. So if you're going to create a log for residents, how will that happen? Will you knock and tell everyone that they can come and register their concerns? How will you put that into place?
Well, like I mentioned earlier about the idea of the email chains, I was intending to post a note or a letter through to the entirety of Queen Street, and the Bay Road is almost Queen Street type area, with an email address for them, so that they can then reply to us and say, yes, I'd like to be on your email mailing list to know of your events, and also here's my email. So they then have access to our email. I mean, pretty much everyone in this day and age has access to Facebook. Most of our complaints that I do receive from residents come through our Facebook page. It is the easiest way to communicate these days. I know Mr. Barrington mentioned that sometimes he rings and don't answer the phone. If I'm busy serving a customer, it's more important for a business point of view to make the money by making the sales than answering the phone and stopping serving a customer. So phoning us at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night isn't the best way to get in contact with us. Whereas a simple Facebook message will be checked within 20 minutes because all of myself and all of the staff have access to that page. So someone will see it and we can then respond and react a lot quicker to any complaints or issues raised.
I take it you have an answer machine.
Yes, we do, yeah. Which it's a business phone thing. I do have to go onto the internet to listen to the voicemail recordings, unfortunately. So again, that isn't the quickest thing. I normally pick the voicemails up at the end of the night.
And the number that they're contacting you on is a mobile number?
No, it's a landline number diverted to my mobile. It is, I believe it's on our Facebook page and it's certainly on Google.
Do you have any further questions for Mr. Rock, anybody? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Catherine, do you have any questions for Mr. Rock?
Thank you, Chairman. No.
Anything that you'd like to add, Darren? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, mindful that everybody has had their say, everybody's asked their questions, made their comments. I'm now going to move on to summing up, and this will be your final opportunity to give us any information that you feel as though we need to make our balanced decision. I don't want you to go away from here today thinking that you haven't had a fair hearing, because that's not what this is about. I want to make sure that everybody has had their say and that they're happy that they've had their say. Okay, but obviously, if we can stick to the licensing facts, and obviously, if your point's already been covered, if we can avoid repeating it, then that would be useful. So in my summing up, I always sum up in reverse order. So you'll be pleased to know, Mr. Rock, I will come to you to say if you've got anything to add to summing up. If you haven't got anything to add, that is absolutely fine, but it's just your final opportunity.
Yeah, in summary, I was just making notes of what I wanted to summarise. In summary, we would voluntarily or forcibly lose the 24-hour licence and go till 2 o'clock. We will, regardless of whether we are asked to or not, use our new log sheet to record all customer complaints, all door staffs, all challenge 25 IDs, and any incidents, any police incidents, in a more formal way than we currently do. It would make more sense, in my eyes, for the benefit of the residents, to use the back garden as a smoking area and shut the front door access at 11 o'clock. That, in my eyes, that would make more sense and be better for the residents, for the reasons I covered. Passers-by can't join our group of 5 and suddenly make a group of 10. And I do not believe that we do need door staff every weekend. It doesn't necessarily need to be a condition of our licence. We send risk assessments to the licensing. We've never had one rejected or even questioned. It would be unviable for our business to have, as most premises do, a minimum of 2 door staff every Friday and every Saturday, because in January, February, March, and even April, I've seen the sales reports, it's going to cost too much. I did have door staff through most of April because me and my wife were away, and if I am away, I do have door staff there, but it's not, it would be uncostly for our business to have enforced door staff every weekend.
Thank you very much, and thank you for attending this morning. Okay, I will now go to Amelia Barrington. Amelia, is there anything that you'd like to add? No? Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for attending. Richard Barrington, is there anything that you'd like to add to summing up?
If I may, Chair, the reality is to lose the 24-hour licence and to close at 2 is exactly what's happening now. So there is no change as far as we're concerned, apart from once in a blue moon when he is open later, 4 times a year. So that doesn't actually make any difference to us. That will continue to have the same kind of challenges that we face now. So unless there is something that brings that time, and as we heard, peak time is midnight. that tells us quite clearly that people are going there after drinking elsewhere to drink more before they come out. And that's obviously why we have all the challenges that we have, because it's people who are there to drink, and that's about it, really. So and we hope that you will consider bringing that closing time forward to a sensible period, and if it's operated well over a period of time, perhaps to extend it would be, kind of helpful to us as residents to help us recover some of our time, some of our opportunity in places like our own home where we feel prisoners at the moment. So that's my main statement to you is it's a 24-hour license, nobody uses it. 2 a.m. is exactly what's happening now. There's no change there on the basis of 95% of the weekends that we lose as a result of the behaviours associated with Rocky's Bar. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your time, and thank you for attending. Gillian Collins, is there anything you'd like to add to summing up?
Thank you. And thank you for listening to us all today. Mine's very much, it's been a very, very long slog, 2 or 3 years down the line. The effect of the nightclub operating hours came into force from, I believe, August 2021, because that was the initial meetings with the residents around, thereafter with the concerns and things to the nightclub hours. So in this sort of long slog and putting forward our monitoring forms, which have to be done on a consistent, regular basis, again, it reflects to the number of residents who attended those meetings initially that now feel so let down and just feel, they say, what's the point? We've given up. Nobody's listening. They work, they have families. The last thing they want to continuously do is to do ongoing form filling. It drains you down in the end. The other thing is we've got at least 5 elderly residents who live, spitting distance of the bar, and they're not going to be emailers and people like that. They just don't do that. Somebody said to me, I heard the bar was in trouble with the authorities. It's a terrible place, but nothing will be done though. And that's just awful. I think it's really sad that people sort of take that attitude. They do feel vulnerable. They feel they're sort of locked in their homes at weekends, on weekend evenings, because of, these customers sort of drift over the road and then pitch up on their residents, so these residents' doorsteps, their pathways, and it's under their bedroom windows. So it's really not pleasant at all for them. I don't know, everything that's gone on, the straying customers, personally, I'm convinced, and lucky I've got quite a weird sense of humour, the customers using my driveway to urinate and vomit, that became a bit of sport for them because they were very brazen in their attitude, because I've got a Ring door camera, and they would sort of come up and shake their feathers, before they would do their urination. And again, if I approached Mr. Rock, which I did, and obviously he was having a tough time, I was told I was harassing, so therefore I stopped doing that. Everything gets reported. So again, it all comes down to the low capacity of the policing in the town. And again, this has created a no confidence feeling with the residents, especially in Queen Street. So can the licensing team, significantly influence the policing capacity in North Dorset? We have to ask that question. And I'm sure you've already Googled street maps to see our residential road, how narrow it is. And why do the Dorset licensing, feel this is a suitable place for a nightclub with 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. closures? It gets really depressing. But thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, and thank you for attending. Councillor Rideout.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as we know, these issues have been going on for quite a while, and I know the residents are really feeling it and feeling tired. But this morning, we've had some really good discussion, and I'm so pleased that a lot of things have come out, and Mr. Rock is happy, saying he's happy to reduce his opening hours, lose his 24 operation. There's been some really sensible ideas coming forward. But I think the bottom line is that door security is important, especially on the front door and the rear garden. If the rear garden's closed earlier, say 10 o'clock, and everything's monitored how it should be, everything should run well, and it should be, you know, the residents should be feeling the benefit of that. So I think is increased door staff that do their job properly, that move people on, don't allow loitering, ban anyone who's found conducting any ASB behaviour. I think all these things need to happen. Smoking in the back garden, I think we need to perhaps trial and monitor that, because it was an issue before. But if the garden area closes at 10 and it's strictly monitored, then there shouldn't be an issue. So I think what's come out of this morning's discussions and conversation, I think some good points. And I really hope the panel take on board. I know there's a viability issue as well with the business, but everyone has to be happy. So I'm really hoping that this will come through in what's been discussed this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rideout, and thank you for attending. Catherine.
Just a couple of points. The word nightclub hours is referred to. There is no such thing as nightclub licensing. Licensing is the hours that apply for. This particular premises has 24 hours. How the operator chooses to operate within those hours is entirely up to them. So if they want to go till 3, 4, whatever. And unfortunately, we don't have much influence on Dorset Police and how they police it. But all I can say is, if you have issues, is report it to 101, and they will. You can do that via email. And they can then, that will form a bigger picture, and it will go into a log where they can say, actually, there could be a problem here, but we have no particular influence on that.
It's right, because I've gone through summing up. Okay, that's fine. Lara, can I just clarify that all legal aspects have been covered?
Yes, Chair, everything's been covered.
Thank you. Right, thank you ever so much for everybody attending. I am going to draw this meeting to a close. We are going to retire to make our decision. Once we've made our decision, it will be sent out to you via email, and you will get that within 5 working days. There is a right to appeal. Your right of appeal is when you've received that written decision notice. Your right to appeal is within 21 days to Weymouth Magistrates Court. Are you all happy with that? Okay. Thank you very much, and I'll draw this meeting to a close.